chocolate.
Okay, so get your pictures taken, and you guys got to put your cell phones away, please, in your camera.
I'm assuming this is for us to eat, right?
Yeah, it is actually from Ireland, so it's official Irish.
Even better. I was talking to somebody about Ireland. Who was that?
Probably Dee. He's from Ireland.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. There we go.
I'm addicted to Irish butter now.
I'm addicted to Irish beer.
Okay, please put your cameras and your cell phones away.
Yeah, it's caramel and chocolate.
Hey, best thing on earth.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Go ahead with your questions.
We're still in awe, sorry.
Johnny, would you reprieve that scene walking down the street with the...
Yeah, no.
Well, if he's recreating that one, then Dale has to recreate his.
I'll just have to take my clothes off right here.
Someone has a question here. Someone has a question
I'm
here.
going to ask this for a lot of people who want to know, and they said on the internet, are you guys aware of the massive amounts of fan fiction that is out there, and what do you think of it?
Well, answering for myself, I'm really not. I've seen some. I've like looked around and seen some. What's kind of nice is the amount of episodes and pieces of episodes and you know, music videos and stuff like that that you guys have put together and posted up there. It's kind of great, you know, to kind of to see all that, because it's sort of out there forever, and then it can wrap people back around to checking out the show and, you know, getting the DVDs and watching it from the beginning and all that kind of stuff. So you guys have really kept the thing alive, you know, and you're much more in touch with it than we are.
And the fan fiction brings in new readers a lot too. I mean, it's really, there's some really good writers. Episodes can be made from what they write.
Well, very cool.
John, time to reboot the series.
Why are we letting him spectate down there?
I'd rather second guess all of you like I did all the time.
Well, at
I'm
least
just getting ready to cut you out of the show, Johnny.
feel free to ask some snarky questions then.
I'll keep it. I have a loud voice. I overlooked one person. I'm so sorry. It was a complete mess up on my part. We are so honored today. Mr. John Watson has joined us.
You all right?
It's a surprise.
I'm going to fool on sit next to Fabiana.
And just to show you that people still love it, they make dolls and they make bears.
I'm just, do I need this? No. I'm just so in awe of what you all have done. It's 18 years later and you still kept the flame alive. It's just fantastic. I'm so grateful to you.
The best Western ever made.
Right.
She doesn't need
Movie
to
and series.
No, I have to tell you, I've done a lot of movies and I've done a lot of TV shows. I've been very lucky. I've had a terrific career, but doing this show is by far and away my favorite thing. By far and away. And you know what? It was a lot to do with these folks here. I mean, you know, it was fun every day on the set. It was always fun. It was fun in the cutting room. I mean, they gave us so much good material to work with. So, you know, we had to battle the network all the time, which was frustrating. And it wasn't for lack of support of the fans. You guys, you know, I don't know how many of you were involved back then. How many were like fans from the beginning? Wow. But I mean, you were taking out ads in Variety and writing letters to the network. You know, we should be so lucky to have that kind of support. How many of you, by the way, were involved back when you made a quilt for me? Were any of you involved in that? One leg.
Andy's quilt.
Yeah, I got a beautiful quilt.
I got a quilt that, you know, was done, I don't know how many individual squares there were, but it's, you know, still hanging on in my house in the hallway, because it's just, you know, a memory loyalty of the fans. So I don't know what we did to inspire you all, but
You had 700 men.
You just had Tony and Dale's shirt off.
well, they insisted. What can I say? And every week.
Yeah, he keeps saying that we lobbied for that.
I'll find a spot for it, Tony. I will.
But it wasn't just Dale's shirt.
Yeah, that white butt cheek.
Andy, you were in the bathhouse too. You had your shirt off.
Speaking of white butt cheeks.
No, we had a hard time keeping Tony's clothes on. He was
and then once
always
the
showing
girl
off that
saw
buff
that
body. Still pretty stacked.
Tony, we had Victorian clothes in here. We tried to get him to read you something. Women's clothes.
Oh, no, yeah. That was one of the most excruciating experiences of my life. An episode, I think it was a Chinatown episode?
Yeah.
When,
Working girls.
Working Girls.
Don't try to pull one over there.
Yeah. That's why I'm asking, not telling. But yeah, they got me all dolled up, and I just remember sitting in the makeup trailer and thinking, I look a lot like my sister. Because I really did. I have a sister, Anka, who looks like that sister in that episode. I mean, she's prettier, but, you know, very similar. Then they put the, you know, Dan Moore, our costumer, was, you know, our
Emmy-winning costume.
Emmy-winning designer. Brilliant, obviously, and a former Joycean scholar, I think he was. You know, yeah, and but he, you know, he didn't fake it on anything. So I had a real dress with a real corset that I was cinched into, and I almost passed out in the van late in the set because I couldn't breathe. I'm like, how did women breathe in these things? You know?
Very shocking.
It was brutal, but it was funny though. So.
I was actually going to ask John, because I saw you come in, you made a show out of such an iconic movie. Was it at all daunting? I mean, especially for you guys as well, stepping into characters that aren't the same as, well, except for Eric, of course.
Yeah, it was very daunting, yes. It was pretty terrifying, but, you know, a great opportunity. I don't know if you know the history of it. It was, MGM owned the rights to the Magnificent Seven, and we went in to pitch at CBS to Les Moonves, to the big cheese, and our strategy was to say nothing, just play the theme. And you know, it worked. I mean, you just turn on the music and he was like, okay, let's do this.
That's how Hawaii 5-0 got on also.
So then they were trying to sell it as a series, but he only agreed to what's known as a backdoor pilot, where you make a movie for television, and if it gets good enough ratings, then you become a series. So he wasn't committed to the series until the pilot aired, and the pilot was, I guess, did huge numbers. So we were given, and then the disappointment was we thought we were going to be on the air, and it turned out we were a mid-season replacement show. You know, I guess you guys know the history of that. So it was a constant battle to try and get them to keep us on the air, and keep us on the same night. We were on Friday night, we were on Saturday night, we were back and forth. So tough to build an audience when that happened.
Or keep an
No one ever knew when we were going to be on the air. We never knew when we were going to be.
Preempted by the other day and this thing.
Yeah.
Well, this is, you know, pre-DVR and all that kind of stuff, you know, where if people are not in that night, then they can't see your show.
So back to your question, yeah, it was pretty terrifying, and so trying to do a new version was you know, the characters are distinctive. There was a character called Chris, right? In the original?
Yeah. And there was a Ben in the original.
Ben, yes. So we kind of based it on some existing elements and then created new elements. You know, I can't honestly remember, it was like probably 20 years ago since we did the pilot. Was it? You guys probably know better than me.
It was 97.
97.
97, yeah,
So-
It was 18 years ago.
18.
Cheaper than
You were only 2, so.
It felt good while we were making it. We were out in Arizona, and it felt good. It just had a really good dynamic, and you know, we did a great job in casting. I want to, you guys agree. The process at CBS casting has just to be terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
The actors come in and they're under a spotlight, and there's a whole big proscenium of executives, and let's move this as quick with the chop, so an actor would come out and be like 2 sentences into his performance, you go, okay, next! So these guys, I think
I just kept talking.
I just skip.
I don't believe that.
It was, if you survive that and get on an air at CBS, you've got a tough guy.
I only did 3, so I didn't have to go through the network approval.
Just had to get through me.
Right.
I watched your video over and over and over again. I can't tell you why. I just wanted to keep
Very flat. Well, very fortunate. Whatever I did, I'm glad I did.
I'm going to deflect. I don't want to be the only one answering questions here.
Yes.
How much control did you guys have the actors for the costumes and the dialogue?
Costumes, none. But we did have input, and they'd ask us about things and stuff like that. Dan would have conversations with us about that stuff, but I mean, these were his creations, and everything was written by the writers. I was given a certain amount of latitude to sort of Ezra-fy my lines a little bit, make them a little more highfalutin to the point of being incomprehensible, which was his largesse, actually.
Just like that, right there.
What did he say?
There you go.
Every once in a while, we watch the videos, do Ezra's lines, stop it, look up the word.
Yeah.
I said I wasn't going to speak, but I want to jump in on this because I worked on a lot of TV shows. I can guarantee you there was more flexibility about lines in this show than any other show ever.
I would agree.
Certainly the ones I've been involved in.
Yeah.
And you know why? It's kind of a product of the way things happen because we never knew if we were going to be on the air or not. We never had a consistent writer's room. Most TV shows, you guarantee a certain number of episodes. You have a writer's room. You have 7 or 8 writers around the table. We never had a writer's room, ever. It was like, we'd write it 1 episode at a time, and we didn't know it was going to be on the air, and they would only order 1 or 2 at a time. So I relied on these actors more than I normally would in a TV show. They knew their characters better than anybody else. They certainly knew them better than the writers, sadly, because the writers hadn't. I mean, Melissa Rosenberg was on the longest, I think, and she didn't start on the show.
Yeah. No.
So they knew their characters inside out. So I was always very trusting of their instincts.
And John and Penn also, excuse me, John, to interrupt, but they were always open to. I felt you were always open to ideas for the character. Going forward, if we were going to get another script or an episode, and it was a great collaboration. I felt, I think I can speak for all of us, it was one of the best experiences as an actor to be able to work with the writers that way.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Well, Michael especially, Michael, bless him, because as like many good actors, he always wanted less lines. I knew there was an issue because I was down in my office and I'd hear the clunking of boots and spurs coming down the hall. Here comes Michael! One of them that you and he were at, and Dale, you were out shooting a scene at Melody Ranch in the back lot, and it was something to do with you were firing up bottles or something. Do you remember that scene? And you both were like, this scene sucks. It doesn't work. And they were in the middle of shooting it. So I had to go out to the set, and we kind of wrote it together on the set.
Well, that's actually, I don't remember, couldn't tell you right off the top of my head which episode it was.
It was pretty early on.
No, I mean,
No, of that
No,
stuff.
I-
She's thinking of
I'm
something
thinking of-
else.
One of my favorite things was Chris came in, and it might have been, never mind. You don't come to me later. I'm having a wrong moment.
Hey, I resemble that remark.
Where Chris said something, or Vince said something like, "Don't ask Chris because he hardly speaks anyway," or something to that effect. And it was like, well, that's not. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was.
When you hardly more than 3
When he was
words.
gonna be an attorney, when they
Yeah.
wanted to do the
Yeah.
trial.
Defend the
Oh,
trial.
yeah. Well, don't ask Chris to be the attorney, he hardly says more than 3 words a day.
Yeah. That was that, I mean, that for what you said, I mean, one of less lines, you know, he hardly, if, you know, that kind of shows that off for that,
Yeah.
for it, so.
Michael's not much of a talker anyway.
I can't talk today, so.
Hi, I just want to thank you all very much, because I had the experience of working on the show, even for one day, and seeing you again after 18 years is just a thrill for me, because I didn't get a chance to talk to you that day. But I just want to know, I was watching you all talk together, have you seen each other much since then, other than the reunion? And I mean, it's like old homies when I see you together.
No, it's pretty much once a year.
Yeah.
Something else we have to thank you for.
I have lunch with Rick sometimes, Rick Worthy.
Who's in Michigan?
He's in Michigan.
How dare he?
I see Rick a lot. I see Dale.
Darren.
I see Dale. Like we hang out.
My wife cuts his hair for free, that's why.
She hasn't cut it in a while, as you can tell. It's kind of long. And then Eric and I have been hanging out a lot more recently because we're working on something together. So Andy and I should. He just on the road, traveling, creating things. So I never see him. So just one of those
It was
things.
a real bond off set as well as on set. I mean, we used to have regular screenings at my house when the show was on the air.
Yeah.
Oh, and we heard about the Friday nights from
me?
Tony a couple of years ago.
Oh,
You
no,
mean
that
the
was
Friday
when we were
nights on
shooting.
set? Is that
On
what-
set?
Yeah.
After the
Yeah, there were
film
some
was
laws
over.
broken. We were,
Out in the middle
living
of
in the
nowhere.
Wild West.
Yeah.
So.
If there was no dialogue, it was all good.
I just remember that one scene where we were all dancing around the fire. Yeah, it's a good thing nobody had to talk.
I had fun teasing you guys last year about which one of you thought you were the best writer and what Jack truly said about each of you. But since Eric is here this year, I have to tell you, Jack Lilly does say that you were the best writer of the 7, okay?
Well, I was surprised because I thought Kid Kavovit was.
I thought
He said Andy was close, but for what you did with Peso, he said you were the best writer.
I think
so.
we can agree that Ron was the worst.
Yes.
He may not have been the worst, but he certainly looked the worst. He was just like a sucker.
Right. That's not writing, that's
Listening last year to you guys tell
Hanging
stories
on.
about working with the horses were some great stories, and we have some people that are here this year that were not. So if you could share some of those
Didn't you
with
double-
working with the
double
horses.
Ron?
I doubled Ron
One
right
of the
away
shots
from
you
prison.
saw right there is Darren being Ron.
True. It was one of my PA days. Ron had to go to the opening or the premiere of Alien 3. And it's at the prison, they're like, we need someone to double Ron. You're the right height, go to wardrobe. the shot of Josiah holding reading the whatever he's reading, that's me, that's not Ron. They did a close-up of Ron, then Ron had to leave, they're like, all right, back shot, get it.
You did a good job that you rode too well. Wasn't it riding away from the prison?
Yes,
Yeah.
we had to get on, and Eric sprinted away. Eric was in the lead. I'm gonna trot here. I'm not gonna try and get crazy.
Yeah, we used to. It was crazy because you guys remember they would call action and we would just haul ass out of there. Guns would fall off. Microphones were the mic packs were bouncing off.
I was terrified every time. I was closing my eyes. No one get hurt, please, please.
And then at lunch we'd have an hour for lunch and none of us would go eat. We'd all just jump on our horses and just go off and ride. And you remember we were working at that one place? Maybe it was at Melody, but there were cattle around. And we went up and we were like rustling dogies or whatever.
Disney Ranch.
Yeah, they probably was. Yeah. We milked a few too, I think.
There were a couple of shots that we did. I think I've talked about this before, but a couple of them I remember. One was we all, they were all the difficult ones where we all side by side, and one of them we were kind of charging down a very steep incline. That was scary. But the scariest one to me was we were behind. We were just going flat out on a flat road, a flat dirt road. were all next to each other, and the road wasn't that wide, so we were so close that our spurs were literally clanking together behind this truck, and we were about as far behind the truck as from this table to that far table, okay? And we're going about, I don't know, it seemed like 25 miles an hour, and maybe faster. And I just thought, man, if one of us topples or one of these horses trips, we're all going down. And then we're all gonna hit that car, you know, so, but we did it.
Do y'all remember when we shot at that one place in Simi? It was I don't know if we were breaking Chris out of jail or something, and he was in a camp and we ride in to rescue, and it was pouring down.
Yeah,
rain.
that's the same episode of Double Drawn.
Yeah.
It was like a foot of mud. It was absolutely, it was slick as ice. I mean, that was a crazy night.
My horse went down, and the wrangler said, "I've never seen anybody get off a horse quicker than that." By the time he was on the ground, I was standing next to him with the reins.
And you stepped off of it because he was, Wow, yeah, that was a wild night.
I was just wondering, if it had run a lot longer, how would you have liked your characters to have developed?
How would they have developed?
How would they have liked the characters to have developed?
Genuinely say I have no idea, because we were just getting 1 episode, 2 episodes at a time, and we were kind of scrambling, trying to come up with ideas. We didn't ever project. We just ever project too far into the future.
We hated Ella.
We've been doing your fan fiction, for long. I don't know. Did we ever have those conversations? Anybody?
Well, I don't think we were allowed to get to that point where we could project that far ahead, you know? We weren't in that position, but I can say for myself that as the show progressed and some of the storylines got a little bit darker psychologically, I've found that really interesting to have that as a counterpoint, because the show had a lot of humor to it. And it was great to kind of dig into some of the backstory of characters and figure out, you know.
The premise was a very difficult premise, because when you look at the movie of Magnificent Seven, it doesn't inherently lend itself to a series, particularly since most of the characters die. It's like, who are they? What's the reason for this group to be together? And the cement that we came up with was the idea of the judge, and how they were basically working for him to take care of this area, this town. So it was a challenge. The other challenge CBS gave us was they wanted to see all 7 together in the final scene of every episode. It's really hard, and I think it caused some frustration because the stories sometimes lead to a mano a mano climax of some kind, but we could never do that because we always had to come up with some reason why they would all be together, all participating in this final scene.
Yeah, selfishly, the way I would have liked to see it play out is that Vin and Laurie Holden's character got married and had lots of kids.
Yeah, that would be better than her marriage.
In my fan fiction, that's where it went.
I want to know how's your reading lessons? Yeah.
Pardon?
Vin's reading.
Oh, the reading lessons.
More better.
And does he get cleared?
That was actually an area
of his murder charge.
Eric was originally resistant to the idea of being illiterate. Do you remember when we first came up with the idea? And then you completely embraced it and made it happen. And it was really a fun evolution.
Yeah. And and as a matter of fact, sorry, at one point, a dear friend of mine who's passed away, Chad Everett, I don't know if you guys
Yes.
Chad wrote cowboy poetry.
Yes.
And so I approached John and said, would you mind if Chad wrote a poem for Vin?
Wow.
And Chad wrote it, and it's in the episode.
Yeah.
The one that he recites. So
one of the things about heroes is that the best heroes are always have flaws.
Definitely.
So we wanted to make sure that everybody has flaws. The conversation I had with Eric was, Vin is really too good a guy. It's like, he's perfect. So let's give him something, and you embrace it. And I thought it was a really nice little touch.
That's one of mostly flaws. Just a gold tooth.
J.D. was trying to prove himself too much.
Did you ever get to do any of your own stunts?
Well, I mean, the writing itself, you know, and,
All the fist fights.
fist fights,
Yeah.
sword fights.
By the second season, we were all pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for guns.
You know, I think one of the reasons we managed to deliver what we delivered, I mean, there'd be an item in the script which said gunfight ensues. You know? And each gunfight, there had to be, you know, all 7 of the guys were there, and usually Laurie had a gun too, and then in order to even out the odds, there had to be 20 to 25 bad guys. And so everybody had to be firing, and the only way we got through it was, A, we had directors who really got it, and a DP who was really, really quick. And
Gordon Lonsdale.
yeah, I mean, Gordon was fantastic. There was nothing precious about the way he shot it. It was like, put the actors in place, I'll shoot it, I'll figure out a way to do it. And it always looked beautiful, but, you know, all of us have worked with so many DPs where everything has to be just so precise. So he kind of went for it. And the reason we got through it was we decided just to dispatch with blood. You know, so the actors would just fall down.
Except when JD got beat up.
Yeah, one every now and then, there was a specific where it did, but I think you'll find in the gunfights, it's very rarely that we ever use a blood gag. I mean, you guys know the show probably better than I do. I don't remember us doing it. So the actors were really good at that. They knew how to fall down well. The only time we really needed to have doubles was when people were falling off horses.
Well, we know Darren knew how to fall down well in Manhunt.
Yeah, I was the clown, the class clown that episode, getting my ass kicked every other day. Who's kicking his ass today? Dale, Tony today, Eric and Rick tomorrow, Michael on Thursday. I told you before, the Michael beating was the worst, and that one got cut from the show. Thanks a lot, Bob. The Michael beating was the worst.
Did you ever have a stunt double?
No. I didn't want one. I was 21. I thought I was invincible. I'm going to stunt double. After the 25th take, I was really asking for one, particularly with Michael. And the one that made it into the episode with Eric hitting me, that was the one remember you actually landed, like, I told him, like, just land. And that one really got me good on that one. It was just like, oh, God, that hurt. Eric was like, wait, you're good with this, right? I'm like, I'm fine with it. Just land on it. We'll be good. We'll sell it. And he really nailed me. And I ended up in the show, so hey, it worked. It was real.
That reminds me that in the pilot, you know, that whole thing of like shooting a hole through the ace and everything in the pilot and everything, and I get into a fight with this really tough-looking customer. That's a pretty legendary stuntman. His name went by the name of Boots. Yes. Okay? And I'd done a bunch of picture fights, and I kind of learned how to sell a punch, either throwing a punch or taking a punch. But when it comes to throwing a gut punch or a body punch, you kind of have to kind of make some contact or whatever. And so I was doing what I was used to doing with him, and he was getting a little bit like agitated. I could tell, and I'm like, "Is everything okay?" And he goes, "Well, just go ahead and hit me." And so the other next take, I kind of really laid into him, you know, and he was like, "Come on, hit me." I did everything but say you punch like a girl. And so then the final take, I finally I brought it up from the floor and I hit him, and he was like, "All right." Showed you that I'm not exactly cowboy tough. Who's picking the questions? I've been doing it.
You're the moderator. You're
How did you handle the heat? Because I know when we toured Melody Ranch, it was ungodly hot by like 10:30 in the morning, and you guys were wearing.
We had a bigger issue with the El Nino storm.
Yes.
There was, I don't know, the whole month or two where it never stopped raining.
Yeah. That was a bigger issue, but we did have a couple of days that were so hot that we lost a couple of crew members. I think went off to the hospital for heat stroke.
Yeah.
You know?
It was either extremely hot, or there was some of the coldest days I've ever experienced in my career were days when we were shooting early mornings out on those hills.
Yeah.
I mean, it was bitter cold, and just low-lying cool, and your feet were freezing, and yeah, it was either really hot or really cold on that show.
Because you were never
frequently
really,
in the same day.
You were never really inside, because even when we're on Main Street in Melody Ranch and you're in those interiors there, they're kind of old-time movie sets that are basically, it's just, you know, the facades and you're inside there, but you're kind of always sort of outside, you know, but that was, I think, half the fun of it too. You know, getting to run around all day, ride the horse, shoot the gun, kiss the girl, go home. It's great.
Be the girl in your case.
What?
Be the girl in your case.
Yes.
Okay, because Dale's sitting over there, oh, so nice and quiet. I love and honor, Dale, when you had to learn to, I don't remember if we've asked you this, but when you had to learn to fence, did it take a lot for you to learn, or did you know already?
No, it didn't take a lot. The instructor was really, really good, and we just put in hours and hours and hours. And,
Was it
Anthony
DeLongis?
Yeah.
Anthony DeLongis, yeah. He's one of the best in the business.
It was just a lot of fun, you know, and getting that, it's a dance, you know, and getting that symmetry down in the dance, that was the fun part.
We were talking about that over lunch as being one of our favorite episodes. One of Dale's favorites.
Yeah.
We had,
Tony and I had great scenes.
Alex, I can't think of Alex's last name. Cruz, thank you. And a couple guys for Zorro, and they were doing a sport fencing demonstration on Friday. And so, that's what also one of the reasons why I was just thinking about that. And with Fabiana, it just made me go, oh, wait a minute, I don't remember if we ever asked that.
Is someone back here have a question?
I did. I wanted to know what each actor's and everybody's most favorite episode was and why.
Manhunt, because it's the only one I'm in.
Oh, no, you were in and you made 78, you were just...
Yeah, but that's not me. That's me. Ron. It's not the same.
I'm going to give the same answer I give at school, because I teach at USC School of Cinematic Arts now, and every semester we make a bunch of movies, my students do. And they're always people trying to get me to pick my favorite. So I say the same thing to them as my mother used to say when we quizzed her about her children. I love all my children equally. So I feel that way about these episodes. I mean, I'm really proud of all of them. I thought they all had different things going for them. I don't think there aren't any bad ones, is there?
No.
No bad.
Sorry, I didn't really mean the episode. I meant like something that happened when you were filming your episode. So why was it your favorite to do that part?
Come on, Andy.
Like you
Well,
said,
I don't know that I have
sword fight.
Yeah, my favorite experience, I mean, I think there was an episode where I was featured in a bit more than I typically was. You always like the extra work, but for me, the pilot was the most memorable just because it was where the memory started, you know, and it was great.
Tombstone.
Couldn't have been a better experience.
When you got 7 guys with magnificent egos, it was really hard to keep them all happy. That was probably my biggest problem. Was like, how do I get all 7 of them in every episode and give them something really substantial to do? I remember Dale being very unhappy when he was a juryman. He was like, he's sitting at the back of the jury with nothing to do. I can see his face in the
In between breaks, I go, this will get him.
I distinctly remember you doing that.
I think John got pissed at me. He's like, hardly anything useful, Dale.
By the end of the day,
True story.
It was like Lincoln's hat. It was just there.
The guy who played the judge, he kept calling me Mr. Man. He had no idea Mr. Man.
Love and Honor was a favorite of mine. I enjoyed the scenes that Dale and I had, you know, fencing and stuff like that, trying to teach him how to fence and stuff like that. Were funny, I thought, and I loved all the stuff that I had with Michelle Phillips too. That whole backstory. And I really enjoyed the scenes I had with Ron and Serpents in the church. You know, just kind of this guy looking for some kind of redemption. I thought that was.
Did you feel the same thing like when you were doing Hand to God with him? I was watching it and saying, this is Josiah and Ezra. Josiah and Ezra.
It's actually standing the whole thing on its head. That's what's interesting about it, is that, and hopefully we're going to get into more of that in the second season.
Yes.
Hopefully there's going to be. It's looking good. But the funny thing about that is that in that one, I'm sort of the righteous guy, you know, and he's the guy who thinks he's some kind of messiah figure or whatever, but I think he's just nuts. And so I'm the one that's kind of like hunting him down a little bit and trying to hold his feet to the fire to find out, what's making him tick. So that's the
But
odd
it totally
thing about
made me
that.
just sit there going, Josiah Ezra, yes.
It's very interesting to be working with him with so many years in between playing such different characters.
Let's hear from Fabiana. What
Yes.
did you
For me, it was that first, I don't remember the title, when I get the job working at the bar.
Sins of the Past.
That was the very first episode I ever
Yes,
saw.
it has to be, even
They
though.
were showing it like about 3 o'clock in the morning in the UK, and I couldn't sleep, and that's how I found the show.
What was the name
and
of
it
the show?
started.
Sins of the Past.
Sins of the Past,
Sins of the
yeah.
Past. Oh, and by the way, Al Fleming says hello. He's the one you slam into the
Oh,
car.
For the coin?
I know.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It was just I did 3, and it was just a wonderful experience all along. The cast, everybody, the crew, the directing was dreamy. Work experience, but that one, just because emotionally it was the first one I got, and I really, really wanted that part. Competition was hard, and I was coming from a comedy from before, and I really, really wanted to do it. And then it just worked out really well. I felt, oh my God, it's going to work out well, and it just felt confident, and I liked the way it turned out, and so that was my favorite one. And then just the spirit of this girl that I loved, and the mystery of her past, and so that for me. But it's selfishly of me to say that because it was where, but
Not a bit.
Fabiana, if the character Inez would have ended up relationship with any of the 7, which of the 7?
All of them. They're all in love with her.
She would have been an equally opportunity offender.
That's a Bechdel test, so not about you with any of the men, but did you have any thoughts about where you made her so strong and so independent, and I could just see her, actually owning the saloon someday. Is that
Really?
something? Yeah,
I think any strong woman has a really vulnerable side, and I think strength comes from that, and the dream for an actor is that eventually you get to show, and they were hinting at it. There was past that she was fighting, and that's what I really loved about her. So ultimately, if somebody can discover the vulnerable side, that's the person you ultimately maybe fall in love with.
Because you had to be flawed too. I mean, you're also a hero.
Thank you.
This shows my ignorance. What's the name of the episode where we had the sandstorm and there was a murder at the beginning of the show? Penance. Well, I think that was all of their least favorite show. Well, in terms of the film, not the result, but the process of filming, because they all had to work in the sand flying, and
Did we have those big Ritter?
What do we know? What's in the sand? I mean, horses have been here.
Ritter fans.
Yeah, so everybody had to wear masks. Whenever they weren't on camera, everybody was walking around with bandanas on to try and protect themselves.
7 magnificent.
I thought it was a fun.
The 7 magnificent divas.
Okay, it's Eric's turn.
They all had their diva moments, but they're all great, hardworking guys.
Your favorite.
I agree with Andy. The pilot was such an incredible experience. All in all, working with this group of people for the 2 years that we did, the 2 seasons, was the best experience I've ever had. And I've said it in writing and interviews. People have asked me over the years, "What's your favorite job you've ever had?" This was it. I love this group of people, working with them. I was inspired by these actors. I was newer in the business, and these guys are all so on their game, and I learned a great deal from just watching how good they were at taking the material on the page and creating the physicality, creating the characters, bringing the humor that they brought to the characters. It was a joy for me to not only to work alongside them, but to watch it come together. I mean that genuinely, you guys, because it was a real inspiration to me. But the pilot, out of all the episodes, I just loved. For example, John and I and Andy, we decided to stay out in the Dragoon mountain range in our trailers when a lot of the the crew, Castle, go back to Sierra Vista, right? Is that the town? Yeah. And go back, and we'd go back in once a week just to do laundry and stuff, but we lived out there, and we would go running at night, or we'd steal one of the gators and go riding at night along these roads, and that was at the time when Comet Hale-Bopp was in the sky. And so, you remember that? And we would just sit out under these magnificent stars, and then during, like, in between scenes, that if I wasn't in a scene, I'd set up rock climbing ropes, and we'd go rock climbing. It was really a great time just being together with these guys for the, period of time that because we did a two-part, the pilot was 2 hours, right? Yeah, so it was like shooting a movie.
I was in the hotel drinking with Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
When you looked up, you saw the ceiling. And so great just to know that you were still conscious.
In fact, this is an insane time for me, because I was, at the same time we were shooting the pilot, I was also executive producing a TV movie for a TNT called Buffalo Soldiers, with Danny Glover.
Yes.
And they were filming simultaneously.
Wow.
They both shot at Mescal, and they both shot in those mountains outside Tombstone. Both of them did. In fact, on a few occasions they were shooting on the other side of the same hill. The director on Buffalo Soldiers was not as nice a guy as the director on Magnificent Seven. I remember him saying, "If I hear a gunshot from your other set on the other side of the hill, I'm going to kill you." I was like terrified. Hey, I had a gunshot. So I was managing to create the illusion, both as far as the network's concerned, I was exclusive to both shows. I was supposed to be in both places at once. So I had some very, very long days. The days of work, sometimes we were shooting night on this one and days on the other one, so I didn't do a whole lot of sleeping, so hanging out with Eric at night and going for runs was better than sleeping. It was fun.
Yeah, that was incredible guest stars. Who were your favorite?
We shot, no, we were in Sacramento. Did we?
Dale has a
What's that?
Dale.
Favorite.
Probably the pilot also.
You're next.
Just shooting outside of Tombstone at Coach's Stronghold, it was very magical.
We never wanted you to leave Arizona.
Very magical.
Thank you.
But you like the sword fighting episode too, right?
Yeah, I like that one too, but the pilot, speaking of John allowing us to develop our characters, that started early on, even the pilot for me, because I remember I did a lot of improv, especially with JD's character, and all that, those characters developed right there in the pilot, it wasn't exactly written on the script, but it did, and that felt wonderful, for it to go that smoothly, right at the beginning.
We were reminiscing earlier about the decision to give him a mustache, which happened on the day off, I think, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, I've been looking at pictures, and 8 out of 10 men back then had some kind of facial hair. We didn't have one guy with facial hair.
No, JD had his.
Thank you for calling.
Yeah, scrub. That's about all I could grow.
We used to argue over who got the best scarf that day.
And Jack says you look better with a mustache. A lot of us agree.
I had sideburns. You got a question back there?
You had some terrific guest stars. Who were some of the favorite scenes that you had with those guest
Time Daily.
I told you guys that story last year.
Yeah.
You want to hear it again?
Yes.
She played this wonderful character. Was that a Melissa Rosenberg script? I don't know. Where she comes into town, and it just the whole art department and again the wardrobe and everything was just so fantastic because this kind of black death wagon rolls into town and there's all these men that come climbing out of it like out of a clown car or something. And finally, the queen of the damned, she comes out of this thing all in black and it's all funereal because she's mourning the death of one of her sons and she's seeking vengeance. And they gave her this speech that was Shakespearean. It was phenomenal. Just beautifully written and poetic and everything. And she's just like fulminating to the heavens with this thing and raising the rafters like, some kind of Baptist preacher. And she does this scene. She comes in, she's in the bar, and she's doing this scene, and we're all sitting there like, So, wow, so that's how you do it. And because she's just a powerhouse of an actress. She's one of the best on the planet. And she's like about 3/4 through this thing, and she takes this pause, and we're like, oh, what's she doing now? And she just goes, son of a bitch! This friggin' acting stuff, just when you figure it out, you can't remember the word! So, did one more and she nailed it.
I have to tell you, this is probably a story I shouldn't be telling, but it's, we're all friends here.
Yeah.
Robert Vaughn. So the network calls up and says, okay, we got to have one of the original 7. So I'm going through all the bios and trying to figure out who's still alive. Who's still working and who's realistically...
Ever the romantic.
Who's realistically a get for this, and it basically came down, it was Robert or nobody. So I phoned up our co-executive producer, who's still going strong, I understand, Walter Mirish, and said, they want to use Robert. You know, you're still in touch with Robert? He said, are you kidding? I hate that guy. I said, well, they want to use him in the show. He said, over my dead body they're using him. So I go to the network and say, Walter really doesn't want to use Robert Vaughn. Well, tell Walter we're using, it's like it was a power struggle. But fortunately, I wasn't in the middle of it. So anyway, bottom line is Les Moonves wants Robert Vaughn, so we got Robert Vaughn. So Robert Vaughn's in the show, and while we're filming, Walter and he don't happen to be around until one day we're out at Melody Ranch, and it's Walter's birthday, and he said he was coming to the set. So we all made a big fuss and made a cake for Walter, and there we were around the lunch table having lunch with Walter. And Robert Vaughn happens to be working that day. So Robert Vaughn comes around the corner, and I'm going, oh shit, what's going to happen now? So, shows you nothing ever changes in Hollywood. Robert goes, Walter! Walter goes, Robert! And they run together almost like in slow motion. So great to see you. I'm so happy you're in the show.
I don't know whether to laugh or cry at that one. It's true. We also had Ed, I'm blanking out his last name, great actor. Ed
Lauder?
Yeah.
Lauder.
Bruce McGill.
Bruce McGill.
Oh, yeah. A. Martinez.
Martinez on the radio every day.
Different name, Martinez.
Michelle Phillips. Was Bruce McGill in Quest for Fire?
No, that was Ron Perlman.
No, Ron. We had another, but Bruce McGill he was in Animal House.
Animal House.
Yeah.
He was D-Day.
Really scary. The guy
we had the guy
what's his name? He's been in everything.
Brad Dourif.
Yes.
That guy terrified me.
And
I don't know whether he was in character the whole time, method acting or what, but he was
He was kind of spooky.
Like a walking clown. That scared you.
Yeah.
Like a clown that scared you.
Yeah.
Tail and everything.
He was the guy who was in prison who was
Oh, Jeff?
Huh?
Jeff?
No, he's a Canadian actor who, what is his name?
The warden, yeah.
Sam?
You've got IMDb.
Well, we also had the guy from Deliverance. We had. No, different guy.
It's like a baby.
Ron.
Don Swayze was great.
Don
Don
Swayze.
Swayze.
You guys got your phones?
So I said, who's got IMDb?
Yes. You.
Andy, I've always wanted to ask this, since you were by far the youngest character in the kids group.
Still am.
I know you've ever started auditioning for adult roles, but translate off, sorry.
You mean adult roles?
Andy, did that translate off screen? Did you feel they were extra protective or something?
Oh.
Oh, yeah, we caught
Honestly, I grew up in a house full of 6 kids, and I got treated the same way on this set as I did with my own brothers and sisters.
You weren't that young. You look young, but you weren't that young.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
acting.
How old were you in the pilot?
5.
He wasn't that young.
But he played so much younger.
Yeah.
That kind of made me think. I grew up with 6 brothers who, it wasn't fun. So I know, you had to.
Yeah, they were not nice to me. They weren't gentle, they weren't, no. It was the way it should be.
This is for Annie and Dale. You guys probably remember Sue was here from UK last year. She gave you the little.
Yep, the little
She
doll.
couldn't be here this year, but she wanted me to ask a question about lady killers for the 2 bounty hunters. In the script, after JD gets shot and Buck's taken back to town, in the script you were writing tandem, but in the episode you wrote separate horses. And she wondered why that didn't pan out.
Wow. Can we get back to you on that? Talk to some people back here about it. Was it raining that night? I don't know. That was it with 2 horses?
But in the script it says that JD and Buck are on the same horse.
We must have had an extra horse
Oh,
that night.
I remember, there was no way I was getting on a horse with Dale.
I was an excellent rider.
Not even injured.
The way Raymond was an excellent driver, right?
Yeah, well, we had to make a lot of adjustments like that on the set. You know, in the writing room, things seem very easy. When you get out to the set, sometimes you have to make adjustments, and sometimes it doesn't work out in the cutting room.
Yeah, I mean, I think the logical thing there was we went out on 2 horses, so I think that's why we came back with 2.
But how could you ride that badly injured? That didn't
I am
make
really
sense.
tough.
Hey, they didn't tie him on, so.
Yeah,
This is how, John Watson.
There was some fairly miraculous recoveries from the end of the pilot to the beginning of the next episode.
There was.
My original intention in the pilot was to kill someone. One of them died, and we were going to replace him. And for some reason, people liked Dale's character, so we could. Because we didn't think, because Ron did the pilot and said, okay, I'm going to do the pilot for you, but I'm not. If you go to series, I'm out. You know, I'm too big for the show. No. Which he probably was, but he really liked it. So you know, he said, he called up and said, I hear you're going to series. I said, yeah. He said, I'm in. Okay, another rewrite.
Did you know that the poster, the actual poster of Mag 7, you notice Ron is all slumped over?
Yeah.
When we were shooting that, I'm watching it, we're done. I said, Ron, why are you slumped over? Because in the last scene, I was wounded. So I'm slumped. I said, this is the poster that's going to be seen around the world. Forget about the last scene. He's all humped over on the poster because of that. It's still active.
Yeah, so we actually had one of the soldiers was going to take over, right? Remember that?
It was the English guy.
Yeah.
The English guy who was the second episode. Don't ask me how I know.
He was Irish, right?
So I had to break it to him, and that was one of the harder conversations. I know you were hired on to be in the series, but
Guess what?
you're gone.
You're fired.
Was that before or after his character got shot?
Yeah, before I think I can't remember the time. He did die in the pilot.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we had to make that adjustment. Yeah.
Another great character we had in the pilot, Kurtwood Smith.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, great actor.
You need a lot of English people here. 1, 2, you English?
Me?
You're English.
I am.
Huh?
What, you have a question? Back
From the UK, raise your hand.
In addition to the attention to detail in the costumes, it looked like you used a lot of natural lighting.
Looks like what?
A lot of natural lighting, or more natural lighting. There were a lot of scenes that you took advantage of stuff coming in through windows and stuff. That really seemed to add to it.
Yeah, well, we didn't have time to light. We were shooting 7, 8 pages of gunfight ensues. I mean, we went like gangbusters throughout that show. It was thank God for Jordan. Let's go, let's go.
Did you actually?
Sun's down already? Okay, don't worry about it, we'll shoot it.
Did you shoot any real bullets with that translate?
Never got to shoot real bullets, no. They were pretty, I think wasn't that around the time that Brandon Lee was?
Not long after.
Yeah, so I think that we were, we had to be safe, you just can never. I was thinking about the costumes, we were talking about Dan, and I remember when we were doing the pilot, they had all these Western table books, coffee table books. And I remember just scouring through those for hours, just picking out different ideas and being able to go to Dan and then also the hair and makeup people and talk to them about, I think we all got to do some of that and then, build these characters like with the wardrobe, because Dan had great ideas. I thought, did you get some, did you get to collaborate on Ezra's
Well,
wardrobe?
he gave me some choices,
Right.
like this hat or that hat. But he was just coming up. I mean, my wardrobe was so great. He was just coming up with this stuff, and I'm like, this is all great. And it was I had the red coat and everything like that. And, I got a green coat too. It was also great. I was just like, bring it on. And I also had that steampunk kind of contraption, with the Derringer in it. So it was also much fun. I don't recollect like feeling the need to kind of adjust anything that he was throwing at me. I was just like, great.
Well, do you remember Kurt, was it Kurt Sakin, was he the pilot? Did he do the props?
Yeah,
The props. So we're all out there in Arizona, and they go, okay, now you gotta go pick out your weapons, So I remember walking in, and there's just this table full of these beautiful guns, and I go, wow, that's Chris's. Okay. Well, that's Ezra's. And as I was each one, I'd kind of like, I really like that, and then he goes, well, here's what I had in mind, and that's when he pulled out that. Yeah, I was like, that's cool. I'll go with that. There's a lot of cool weaponry there.
The one thing I did go to him with was, I said, can I have a gold tooth? And he said, okay. I'm busy. I went to a dentist the next day. We were already out there. We just done the table reading, and I went and he fitted me with his gold tooth.
So cool.
Was there a story behind the whole thing?
No, I thought it bespoke someone who was a grifter. It's kind of every time he smiled, he went, oh boy, he's going to cheat me.
Did you ever have a problem with it
Tony
staying?
embraced the evil in his character. He was always like, I'm gonna get it a little bit more devious, a little bit more evil.
Untrustworthy.
Did you ever have a problem with it staying on? Because it looks in one scene, and I don't remember which episode it was, but it almost looks like you're talking and you have to throw your tongue over there to push it up a little bit.
That may have happened, there was like different variations on how we did that. Finally, we had it redone, like for this, going from the pilot to the series, where it was more like something that clicked in, and at first it was something that, makeup department was just like trying to glue it in, and it was kind of a funky mess at the beginning. But then we went to a different dentist out here, and when he had more time to work on it, and he made it kind of like an appliance that just clicked in. It was great. Didn't inhibit my speech or anything.
Do you still have it?
I don't. I might, but I don't know where it is. Yeah. I moved a lot since then, so it's probably in a box somewhere.
Here's one, Eric. What was the reason for the change in Vin's coat from season 1 to season 2? Everybody made such a big deal about that.
Did it change?
Yeah, you're right. I think in the pilot it was like a canvas jacket.
Yeah.
Right? And then actually what I was more thrilled about that change was the hair. It was like a wet muskrat or something. We kind of figured that out a little bit in the series, but yeah, I love the coat that we got for the series. That
Well, it's
leather.
interesting. That coat translated to.
Well, that's what I'm hearing, but I think it was a different size.
Yeah.
So when you say people make a fuss about it, within the fans,
Yeah, they were just like, why? Oh, he changed coats. And like, so it was like, if you changed Ezra's style of dress, everybody went nuts. They said, where did Vin get a second coat? Why did he change coats?
One has studs on
You got it at Marshall's.
Did you guys get to keep any pieces of your costume or souvenirs from the show?
Andy did. Yeah, I still got a hat and I got the guns.
You know,
Wow.
Kept the guns.
You got the gun?
Got the guns.
I didn't get the gun.
Give them back.
That's because you got the girls at
I haven't seen her lately.
Lady right there, that
I got a question for Eric over here. Was it always extensions, or did you ever grow it out of it?
I grew it out, but it was still extensions too. Yeah.
You did like the long.
Like my beard, it didn't grow very fast. But I had to glue something in every day I come into work.
Yeah. Chaz loves the hair.
Long hair, great.
So the
It was
Nashville
kinda
beer,
gross.
is that not real?
That was real, yeah.
Yeah, this is actually the second pilot that Eric and I had done together. The first one, none of you will have seen. We did a pilot, do you remember?
Yeah,
it
Taking
was like-
Liberty.
It was a Civil War story, right?
Yeah, it was about like during the time with Ben Franklin and it was in 1776.
Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
I have a copy of it. In fact, the girl who made these and I went up and saw your Liberty Made. We're one of like
You
3 or
found
4
that pilot?
people out of
Do you have it with you?
the fandom. No, in fact, we know someone who has a copy, but she's lost it, and we're trying to get her to find it so we can put it on
Wow,
the
talk to him. I'll tell you, a cool story about that is that pilot that John and I did together was the first TV pilot I had ever done, and very early on in my career. And John and I it came to a certain point that it was pretty clear that that pilot wasn't going to get picked up. And John and I hadn't seen each other for a little while, and I was still obligated to that pilot with CBS, and I went in and auditioned for a TV show to be a lead in the show, but I was in second position, which means you're obligated to a different show. You can't, go in first position. Anyway, the executive producer of that show said, I'd love for you to be in my show, but I know you're obligated to this other deal, and it was pretty clear, like I said, it wasn't going to get picked up. So I called John and I said, hey, I have this opportunity. Would you be willing to let me out of the contract? And his exact words to me were, if this is an opportunity that will help you in your career in advance, I want to see you succeed. And he goes, I'll be willing to let you out. And he backed me up. So when I went to the president of CBS and asked to be let out of that particular show, and that was a huge deal for me because it actually opened some doors. But what the cool part about it was we came back around on this show. We got to work together again. I've always been incredibly grateful to John for that because it was a major point in my career.
Okay, we only have time for one more question.
Chris. I don't know how much you all thought about your characters and what their backstory or anything, but were there any stories that you would like to have seen done with the character? Either long lost family members or no marrying Mary?
I addressed that one, yes.
I would like seeing all of Buck's women from his past just show up one day. He's just seeing them wherever he goes.
I want to see the same show.
I think we did talk about that idea. We were trying to figure out how to do a show where Buck had an abundance of riches. Completely embarrassed by all these women showing up at once.
As Buck's little buddy, I would have been into that episode.
Okay, there is one more question. I'm letting her ask it. She came all the way from
First time, yeah.
Georgia.
Georgia.
What did you guys think it was supposed to look like, the whiskey and the beer?
Terrific iced tea.
Whiskey and beer.
I was on
Like mostly iced tea and non-alcoholic beer.
very bitter
O'Doul's
iced tea.
type of beer.
So they could give you that actual kick. It was awful stuff. Even those shots you get, Okay, that's really bad. Thanks.
So Jenny, are we being kicked out? I'm sure we can give you a few more minutes if you want it.
Well, we are wrapping up at 3. I mean, I know all you have schedules, so I'm just trying to run.
Because we're still gonna do, autographs.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Is John staying
It's
around?
going.
it's up to you. If you guys,
Well, anybody have any other questions?
I'm game, I mean.
Rattle them off, yeah, go for it.
Just really quick, did any of you audition for other roles or want another role in the show?
That's a good question.
We have a good story about, I have a good story about that, actually.
Did any of us read for a different role than one we ended up for?
No, I had the choice to, and I chose not to, and that was to read for Vin. I wanted both.
I wanna hear Darren's story. He told it before, but people
Darren's
might
got
not
a
know.
great story.
Great story.
I auditioned for part of JD, and I remember the test, because he was there before me. We talked about it, the thing, he's sitting over there, hunched in the corner, and he's kind of doing his thing, and he went in, and I went in, and it was my dad's partner, Penn, who dinged me, not because of acting, but because Andy looked the part. They had Eric and had Michael. They didn't need another 6-foot blonde guy. even though you asked Andy about age, Andy is older than I am, and I was 18 at the time, which is the age of the character. I'm like, okay, but he looked the part, and I didn't, so he got it.
I got a lot of pressure at home on that one.
But Penn's decision was right, because when I got to the pilot set to visit, and I saw Eric and I saw Michael, I didn't belong in that group. I didn't fit.
It's a credit to you got over your hatred of Andy.
I know. maybe it was the 6-pack he gave me when I went to his trailer on it. Come on in, have a drink.
Your executive producer's son.
I'm glad you didn't read for it, Dale, because you fit Buck.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, he made Buck.
Yeah, you know, John, tell me if this is wrong, but I remember when my agents contacted me about it, that it was for JD.
Yeah.
And
the original idea was, I don't remember who was going to play Chris, but the original idea was Michael Bean was going to be Vin, and you were going to be JD. That's right. Kind of like the.
Wow. And when I read the script, and I really responded to Vin, and I just felt like I was at an age where I just felt like I wasn't going to be JD. That I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be able to do right by that character, and I really responded to Vin.
And I don't think
I'm glad.
Michael would have ever made a good Vin.
No, I think
He wouldn't have played Vin.
JD and Andy was fantastic in that role.
Yeah.
You know, Andy
I saw what they call, you guys know what a breakdown is? It's like a casting notice that kind of goes out, and I saw a casting notice for this show, you know, before they really got into casting, and I went through them. You know, it was the first, like, I don't know, 5 characters or so. I turned the page, and at the top of the next page was Ezra, and I went, that guy. I want to be that guy. And it was a process for me. I think I told you this story before too, because I read for the network like everybody else, and it went well. And I was not immediately cast. There was.
I'll tell you something I told you before. They didn't want you.
No, they
didn't want you.
No, I know.
That was a battle I had to fight, because
John and Penn
we really believed in you, and they didn't get it.
And also John Symes at MGM backed you up, I think.
Yeah, he did.
And but yeah, CBS didn't want me for this part.
They were stupid.
And I kept harassing my agent to keep going back and checking with them, and finally Peter Golden, who was the head of casting at CBS, finally said to my agent, look, get it through your head. Tony Stark is never going to play Ezra. and he relayed that conversation to me, and I said, well, I guess that's it. You know, and I had a newborn son and all this kind of stuff, so I'm like, I guess I better forget about that. Then, cut to about a month later, it was a Friday, it was actually Good Friday, and my agent calls me and says, you got to be on a plane Monday to Arizona for 5 weeks, I think. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They want you to play Ezra in Magnificent Seven. And so I found out through back channels that it was these guys fighting for me. So.
I was wrong plenty of times, so this time I was right.
Thank you.
hard to learn to spin those guns around? Because I have 2 prop guns at home and they're heavy as sin.
Hours of practice, let me tell you, you see him out there day after day after day. It's like downtime.
Yeah, I mean, others fumbled with cigarettes, I fumbled with guns, you know? It was fun. I never considered it practice, honestly. It was just kind of...
More like an OCD thing.
Yeah. No, tons of fun. I just didn't never really think about it, you know?
A lot of us fooled around with those guns a lot on the set and everything like that. And the inspiration for it, really, for me anyway, was going back and watching Michael Biehn in Tombstone.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was so good
Took
that,
you 2
you know, I
months.
kind of wanted to be, like, not terrible.
It took you 2 months to
Yeah, I
learn
did a lot of
that.
card
He
stuff.
did a lot of card stuff in his downtime.
There's an actor who's actually pretty well known now. He's had a lot of success since then, but a guy named Stephen Valentine. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was like a series regular on Crossing Jordan and stuff like that. But he's a British actor who's relocated here. But at the time, he was mostly known as a magician. He was always at the Magic Castle and doing card tricks and stuff.
Yeah, he's the one that got us in for Sean's birthday, remember, John?
Yeah, he's a brilliant sleight of hand magician.
So they hooked me up with him, and I worked with him, you know, and he taught me how to cut a deck of cards with one hand and all this kind of stuff. And the whole thing with throwing the cards into the hat, in I think it was One Day Out West in the jail cell, that was something, it was an idea that I had from a roommate of mine in college, who was this really, really bright guy, and he hardly ever had to study. So during finals week, when everyone else was cramming, he would sit and throw cards into a hat. Because, you know, just to have something to do is like this Zen thing, and I thought that would be a cool thing.
So you can come for poker night?
What?
You can come next year for poker night?
Yeah, if you really want to see me lose my shirt, you know. I'm not a real gambler. Not a real gambler.
She had a question in the back.
Okay, well, it was 2 questions, but I'm just going to say assumptions for one and just ask my main question. Obligatory Harry Potter crossover. I hope you agree with me. Buck, Hufflepuff, Finn, Ravenclaw, Ezra Slytherin.
Yeah.
Gandalf.
Question, because you have the pilot where Ezra, you know, kind of expresses like shock that, you know, Nathan is going to be part of the crew, and that might just be society. But then throughout the rest of the series, well, except for when, you know, Vin asks Ezra to write his poems and Buck and Wagenfeld they play together, you know, you two are kind of the more accepting characters, but the rest of them kind of beat on you. I mean, I always felt like I always wanted to see Ezra get an apology from the others, you know, especially Nathan kind of took the moral high from them. But I was wondering, did any of you feel like the characters experienced like society, well, besides from Nathan, obviously, but any like lingering subtextual prejudice or racism or stuff like, you know?
I imagine that Ezra would have had some hangover from being a Southern gentleman and this being right after the Civil War, you know,
Well,
and.
like the mail order brides or the Chinese girl, you know,
Yeah.
both times like they jumped on you and they're like, somebody was like, wait, no.
But, well, you know, but then, you know, even bigotry can be trumped by a beautiful woman.
Did you call me, what is it, Puffle Duffle? What? Puffle. Okay. Okay.
Know that.
You're smart. The one with the poem, the idea that you're not like book smart, but that you see that you're smart in other ways, like you see the beauty in stuff.
Yes.
Sorry, the young kind of foolhardy.
It's awesome, I love that.
I actually have a question.
So the lady right here has been had a hand up.
This question's for Dale. A lot of times when you rode, you would have your hand. Is there a reason for that?
Comfortable. Wasn't out there just flopping around, had a place to be.
Ed Bundy impersonation.
Close to my favorite parts. He was centered, that's the way Bob centered.
Kept his balance.
Jen had a question.
Yes, a couple years ago, it was Tony and Dale talked about the horses. And I was curious about Eric and Andy. What about your horses? Like, what were the names of your horses and what were their personalities like?
I rode Milagro, and Milagro was super kind of energetic and peppy and easily, really good, easy to ride, but pretty aggressive. I had a great bond with Milagro. I could literally call her, call him verbally and come right to me. So it was good.
Because you were always feeding him.
You were. There were.
Peso. I love Peso. He was he had some spunk to him, but right?
Big time.
Yeah, and but he was great because a lot of this was we were firing guns as we were riding right by their heads, and I had that sawed-off gun, and so he was great with that. Tony was talking about us having to ride down embankments. I always felt really safe on Peso. Just a great horse, and I felt a nice bond as well.
Why'd they switch him out?
I don't know. That was Jack's deal.
Yeah, talking of Jack, he was one of the unsung heroes of the show.
Absolutely.
Jack was
We love Jack.
so phenomenal. He was in the show a number of times. His kids were in the show. I just worked with him again just recently. Did a film down at USC on Don Quixote.
Yes.
So immediately called up Jack. Said, Jack. Well, one of the great challenges was in Don Quixote he rides his horse, or Rocinante, who's supposed to be the ugliest horse in the world, right? That's part of the joke of the book. So I said, Jack, I need you to find me a really, really ugly old horse. So sure enough, he scouted around and he came up with this horse that was like 25 years old and real all skin and bones.
Yes.
But tough. I mean, the Humane Society people, were like horrified that you can't work with this horse. Jack stood up for it and went, no, it's good. So what a gem he is. And his son was the stunt coordinator on that show.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to hog it, but since no one's asking, I think the most important question, there needs to be a reunion movie.
Yes.
Any ideas of what your characters would be? And I want someone in this room or one of the really good writers to write a reunion script so it can get done. I don't think I'm that good of a writer.
I think Ezra's in rehab.
No, I mean, I would do it in a flash if I thought there was any chance at all of it getting on the air.
Do you think there would be though, or is it the rights the problem or something
Well,
like
they're making a
that?
huge feature right now with Denzel Washington.
Yeah, it's got all the wrong people.
Yeah. We're going
Sorry.
to that one.
And Jack worked that too.
It's a strange thing with Westerns. I mean, obviously there have been a few on since we did this, but not many. And there's tremendous resistance. I mean, the bizarre thing when we got canceled was it wasn't that they had bad ratings. Our ratings were really good. They just had the wrong demographic apparently. So, we never did well in the big cities. We never did well in New York City in particular. And when the CBS board lives in New York City and they go to cocktail parties and their friends are not watching the show, I mean, it's still
They must not
think
ask
that,
a
but
bunch
it
of
was.
women. It must be all men they ask.
I think Les Move
We did try to get their attention.
Yes.
Les really liked the show, so he was extremely apologetic when it got canceled, and I believe he was genuine about it because he tends to be quite blunt. He was very disappointed. He got overruled on picking up the show again. So I have no idea he's a bigger cheese now than he was then, but I don't know. I mean, if I thought there was any chance of it, I'd jump all over it.
If someone wrote a really good reunion script, could it get done?
That's all.
I don't want to encourage anybody to go off on a fool's errand.
Speaking of Don Quixote.
You got guys all battled hard, and we all battled hard. I mean, it was something that everybody really, really wanted to happen, and we couldn't get it done then. So, 18 years later, could we get it done? It seems highly unlikely to me. But.
One of your films did show, I mean, the way what people watch on TV now, everything's so much darker and so much more visceral and so much, there would have to be changes in the show that we love, you know, and you love. It would have to be, I think, darker. It would probably even have to be filmed in a different light than how you guys.
Or we go a completely different direction and just make a remake of Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. Dancing on, you know, wooden beams.
Amanda.
I don't usually do the questions, but I'm going to. You're talking about the films that are getting it remade. Star Trek has recently done Star Trek Renegades, and the other one that there are fan films, where the fans went out to Indiegogo Kickstarter, and they raised the money to make the films they want to see. Would that be something you as actors would be interested in if someone was able to go out and do that?
Star Trek couldn't raise the money
Star
themselves?
Trek did. They won't want them back on TV right now. They want the movies, but people wanted a regular series, so they went out and did Renegades, and not remember the other name. What's the other one, Joe? They went out and made like Star Trek: The Next Wave or something.
Yeah.
They brought back. There's a lot of newer actors, but they brought in most of the original. I mean, they've got Walter Koenig back, so that one works within the same universe as Picard, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously,
I'm not writing another
if there was enough
campaign.
money, I guess we'd find a way to do it. But then it'd be a question of how do we get it on the air? You know, we don't want to use fans' money and not have it be on the air.
They use it as a web series.
This is the new
And
social
Netflix.
media.
What's
They're
that?
putting these things out, they're putting these on the internet, they never go to distribution on TV stations.
All right, cool.
Oh, my grandson just arrived.
Well, on that note, I think we should take a little break. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.
I'm glad you asked a question. I knew you were scared to ask a question. So glad.
Just talked and said about it being stopped because of the demographic in the UK. The shows are chosen purely on the ratings, nothing to do with the demographic at all. It's purely on numbers of who watches.
So the US is an idiot because they cancel.
And that one, yeah.